Welcome to the CWC podcast with your host, David Selby, Justin Reed, and Andy Horton.
Okay, welcome to the CWC podcast, the official podcast of the Chuckwagon channel. We are your go-to for Chuckwagon racing news, rumors, interviews, and stories. Also a great way to kill some time. I'm your host, David Selby, joined by my co-hosts, Justin Reed and Andy Horton. How you guys doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Awesome.
Cannot complain. It's in today's episode, we're going to break down the Buckboard division, aka the Mini Classic. We're going to talk about the requirements and the rules for the race, the wagons, and some of the main players that we are watching as we move toward the National Championships coming up at the end of the month. Later, we will be joined by Brad House, the president of the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association, and the current two-time defending national champion in the Buckboard division. It should be a great interview. We're recording on Monday, August 5th, and by the time you hear this episode, we will have released our interview with Dan and Peggy Oaf, the founding father and mother of the National Championship Chuckwagon Races. That interview was awesome, and it's ironic that they told us a story about the time that they had a professional videographer filming a whole day of races for them, just to find out that they only captured audio, while in fact we were conducting the entire podcast interview with them, couldn't seem to get the video to work, only had audio. So I thought that was a pretty funny deal. It was a great episode, though. I'm excited to get the feedback on that. I mean, I think people are going to really enjoy just kind of hearing a little bit of the insight from, Dan and Peggy and everything that they do down there, because I know that so many people, they don't get that chance to just have that one-on-one with them. So hopefully we kind of open the door to that for more people to kind of just see the great people that they really are, and that they really are just people like you and I, and they do put on a big event 1 week out of the year, but the rest of the year they're just working people like you and I. If you love Chuckwagon racing, make sure you go back and listen to that episode. We release a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on the Chuckwagon channel for our subscribers to enjoy, and then we share those episodes publicly on Fridays on YouTube and YouTube Music. Our episodes are always pre-recorded and edited, of course, for Justin's profanity. So make sure that you relive the ride at chuckwagonchannel.com and subscribe to our monthly or annual membership, and you can consume all the Chuckwagon racing content. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube using the handle at Chuckwagon Channel. How you guys feeling about today's interview? Are you excited to get on the call with Brad House?
Should be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, Brad's a straight shooter, so I'm excited to see what he's got to say.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see, and we see him pretty regularly, but you kind of get to be alongside him out there on the track. What's Brad like during the races out there on the track? Is he the kind of guy that's staying pretty actively involved, or is he pretty passive and just kind of lets everybody do their thing? How much president is usually there at one of those races when it's race time?
Yeah, of course. He when it's not his race time, he's out there on the track just having fun with everybody else. He just stands up there at the line sometimes and helps hold at the line sometimes. And when it's his turn, that's when you see those. It's like a totally different Brad. It's game time. It's time to rock and roll, and that's the way it is. I mean, he gets that serious look, and it's no more fun and games. It's time to win. That's the kind of mindset it looks like he's in. But other than that, the only time that he really brings the president out is when there's certain calls, and he helps sometimes make those calls.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely, as somebody that you see has won multiple championships in chuckwagon racing and been in the sport for so long, you just know that he's a serious and fierce competitor, and you have to be not only very good, but you have to be a fierce competitor and serious about it to win at the level that he's done it, and consistently. And so, I'm excited to kind of pick his brain about that and get some of the insight on what his process is. I think it's some of the most interesting stuff, talking to people that compete at the highest level in their individual sports. All right, so into some other news here. the final episode of the Great Wagon Race is officially available on the Chuckwagon channel. So if you want to get really hyped up for Clinton, go over there and have a watch. The whole entire season is now streaming, and we're excited for that because we're getting ready for season 2. But also, episode 1 is now streaming for free on the Chuckwagon channel. And if you haven't had a chance to even start on the series, that's a great place to go. There's no more excuses. Go watch the first episode. Have a watch. Get your first taste of some Chuckwagon racing and kind of what everything's about down there at the National Championships. With season 2 on the horizon, we want everybody to know that we're creating a quality show, something that's going to really represent well for the sport. And there's a lot to look forward to, and I can tell you we've been in all the pre-production and everything for season 2, which means I'm meeting with the editor that I work very closely with, as we both have duties in the editing on the back end of this shoot, and then organizing a crew. We're going to have 13, 14, 15 maybe people that are going to be actively involved with the crew and the actual production of this. Which isn't a studio of lights. These are people running around out in the heat down there in Clinton, running around with gear, and we're not only trying to represent the Chuckwagon channel and the sport and all the above, but we're trying to capture this thing in the most natural way possible so that we can retell that story to everybody in season 2 and also on the DVD. So make sure you pre-order that when you're down there at Clinton this year at the general store. And really excited to share that we're going to have a Chuckwagon channel booth right next to the general store at the saloon. We'd love to be next to the general store. I mean, that's a fantastic spot. We'll be able to get a lot of foot traffic there. We're going to be able to let people know about what we're doing. And on top of everything, with how much we have going on, the convenience of that location is great for our crew, because we're going to be able to have the coolers and stuff like that out there, making sure people stay hydrated with how hot it really is down there. And, which is just part of the fun, I guess. But we're going to have a lot of good stuff going on. We're going to be handing out, we're going to have stickers and coasters, and we're going to have T-shirts and stuff like that we're going to be pushing. And I'm really excited to get that first year of doing the Chuckwagon channel booth down there. That's exciting. So come over there and see us for sure. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about the association, the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association, and who better to ask a question about that than our very own Justin Reed, who is the starter for the association, has been heavily involved with everything they're doing. So, Justin, for someone that does not know what the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association is, I mean, we're going to ask Brad about this stuff too, but what is the association? And, could somebody else get involved with that? What's the setup like there?
Yeah. So basically, it is an association that is basically headed in Arkansas for Chuckwagon racing. You may think that only racers can be members, but that is not the case. Anybody in the public can be a member of the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association. It is a $30 fee to become a member, and you just have to be in good standing with the association. And basically, so if you've not had any real dealings with the association, then most likely you're in good standing. So go out and get your membership. But that's what it is. But there's more than races that are in Arkansas. We've got races in Alabama. We've got races in Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and maybe in the future we'll build on that. There may be races in Texas and things like that, which doesn't mean that you can't go to those races. Those are outlaw races that aren't a part of the association. But we had 8 races this year, so plenty of opportunities to really use that membership. You get a little benefit. You don't have to pay that full price that a spectator may have to pay getting in the gate for the weekend. But if you pay for a $30 membership and you go to 1 or 2 races, you've well paid that. You've paid for it by going there and not having to pay the full price.
Yeah, and is that separate from like a camping fee, or is that usually, or how's that work? Do you know even?
So typically, now it does depend on the track owner, but typically it includes everything. So what you'll pay is they'll have a certain, typically they will have a certain amount that a racer will pay and a certain amount that a member will pay. And then they'll have that normal price for a spectator. And usually the spectator price is, pretty expensive.
Yeah,
and
substantially.
usually they have to pay for the weekend. And, now if you get hookups and things like that, then of course you would have to pay more even as a member. But if you just go out there and you've got a horse trailer or you've got a tent or something like that, or maybe a camper, if you go to like Whiskey Ridge, you get in for a member rate, and once you get in, that's all you pay for the entire weekend, other than the food and if you do any shopping or things like that. But it's definitely worth getting your membership,
Yeah, I don't
rather
think
than.
It doesn't take much to get your money back out of that. And I know I almost feel bad saying this on camera, on microphone, but on the record, I guess. But you go to an event like Whiskey Ridge and you think about the value of going to something like that for that price. It just shows how serious these track owners are about supporting the association and growing that crowd of people and the members in the association, and they're part of it too, and even, Baker Spain, I mean, you think about the value that you get from their concerts. I mean, can you imagine paying $30 for standing, 20 feet away from Riley Green or Casey Donahue or one of those guys? Those are big name concerts that you pay whatever your membership fee is, and I can tell you that's going to be a heck of a lot better than the entry fee, even though the entry fee that you pay to be there the whole week is insubstantial compared to, what you would pay anywhere else. So, just more reasons to get involved with Chuckwagon Racing, guys. So, for those of you that are not familiar with the association, get involved and become a part of it, because we'd love to have you, and we want to grow the sport. And if it's not for yourself, do it for the sport, because I'll tell you what, we want to grow it, and we want to see everybody getting involved, and we want to get more people's opinions and input on what we can do to just spread the name of Chuckwagon Racing. So let's move into the buckboard just a little bit before we get Brad on here. For those of you that are not familiar with the buckboard division, there are a couple of key differences in that division. A lot of people will call it, like I said, the mini classic, and the reason being it's a slimmed down version. It's, I guess you could say, half the size of your classic wagon. That's a 1,000-pound wagon. Now you go to the mini classic or the buckboard, and you've got a 500-pound wooden wagon. It's got a lot of things in common with the classic, other than you're going down to a pony now rather than your full thoroughbred sized horse. And so you're going to see just a little bit of a leaner approach to this, but really the speed does not, from an eyeball perspective, you're not losing much on speed. If anything, you see these teams that are more agile. They can get around the track a little bit quicker. They can weave in and out a little bit quicker. They're going to glide around a corner a little bit quicker. It's a really neat thing. Justin, what are some of the key differences in your perspective? What's happening on the starting line in one of these races versus another division?
So yeah, I will say this: when you get into those rubber tire divisions and things like that, they're lighter wagons. So when you go across that line, you're going to be more apt to tipping and things like that. But when you have a buckboard, it's a lot different. When you have the rubber tire, you got two people sitting in a seat. You have that balance right there, that equal weight. And then when you go in that sharp turn, that person hugs you basically and leans all the way over on your side, so that way you can keep the wagon from flipping. In buckboard division, you don't get that opportunity. You have a person that they don't get in a seat. You've got that driver up front, and he's sitting on that bench up there, and you're at the back of the wagon. Well, when that starter, typically me, no, I'm just kidding. That starter says, "Cooks, load your wagon." They load it and they jump in. I mean, they jump in the back of the wagon. It's almost like jumping into a tailgate of a pickup truck. And then you're going to try to hold on as that driver turns that team, and you're just hoping you don't fall out. So there's a bit of a difference when it comes to that, and it's a quicker start, because you're not waiting for them people to sit down. I mean, as soon as they jump, boom, you're off.
Yeah, man, it's a cool race. Shorter track than the Classic as well, and so you're not going apples to apples there, where you see the Classic wagon finishing just under a minute on a good race. I think you're getting down into the mid 40s or so in the Buckboard, and so those are where you're starting to see your competitive times. Andy, from like someone that's flying around with a drone following these races, what are you experiencing from the air, trying to track with these races? Are they, how fast are they moving from your perspective from the sky?
I've never really eyeballed the speedometer, and it's there. I need to. But all I can speak to is what it feels like when I'm chasing them. And, obviously the Classics do have a lot more ground to cover there, hence the much, longer times on the races. But what I will say is, like, the feel that I get from a buckboard race is like, it almost feels like sprint cars. It's like I'm chasing sprint cars. It's just, they just move differently. And they also interact a lot differently. They seem to me to be more aggressive on the track than even more aggressive than a Classic. It's very exciting to be right over the top of them. And you do get a lot of, you do, they say Rubbins racing or whatever, you do get some of that going on in the buckboard division. I think, I don't know this, I may be out of line here, but I feel like some of the straight line, maybe not top end or whatever, when they really get rolling on the Classics, but I feel like they get faster much quicker. That, like, they're pulling half the weight. Even though they are smaller animals, I still think there's plenty of strength there, and they do feel like they get moving super quick, super fast. I don't feel like they lose as much in the corner. When they come around, they keep their speed up. They drift a lot. They really do sling that wagon around behind them, just because it is so much lighter weight, and they are a challenge to keep up with. Like, if I have to, like, say, stop and change a battery with the drone or something, and they get the jump on me a little bit, it is really tough for me to catch them. Even cutting across the track, it's tough for me to catch them.
Yeah, man, they're moving. It's definitely one of the most exciting races to watch, and I can see why some people say that is their favorite race. I always say that
race.
The Classic. I say the Classic is your NASCAR, and I say that the buckboard is your Formula One, which is true in a lot of ways, but I guess you don't see the drifting really in Formula One. You're sticking to the track pretty good, but you see that drifting happening in the curves, which it may be smaller than a Classic wagon, but it's still a big wagon. It's still sitting up quite a bit higher than these other wagons. And when you see those wooden tire wagons, like you're watching like an old Western, like you're watching a Western film, and you're seeing the most wild Western thing happening down there on the dirt, and they're throwing dirt too. I mean, if you're over there in the curve, take it from the cameraman that's been down there, which is not me, but all the people that I've sent down there to shoot that curve. I mean, they just get covered. I mean, they get covered in dirt down there. And, sorry for, the equipment rentals, that we send those things back. We send a brown camera back when it was,
right.
Black when it arrived. those are some incredible places to watch, are the curves when it comes to the buckboard. And you talk about these teams that get off the line so quickly. You see it immediately. You see them fling and slide immediately around that first barrel. And it's like, oh, okay, here we go. And when you get all 4 teams off the line at the same time and they're neck at neck just in the start of the race, oh man, like, you know, you've got 30 or 40 seconds of just pure rush and adrenaline ahead of you, because something exciting is about to happen. And you hope it's not a bad thing. You hope that if there is a wreck that you don't miss it, but you know that those drivers down there in those good heats, those late heats especially, they are going to take their shots, and it's going to be something that you don't want to turn your head and miss at all, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the message is out to Brad House. We're going to get him on here in just a second. We're going to go a little bit deeper on what's going on with the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association, and we're going to see how he's shaping up right now as we go towards Clinton. So stay tuned. Okay, everybody, welcome Brad House, the president of the ACWRA. Quick intro for Brad. He is the driver of the Full House Buckboard team, and he's been known to have some success at the National Championship Chuckwagon Races in Clinton, Arkansas, as well as the association and outlaw races that he goes to. As a matter of fact, he won the Buckboard each of the last 2 years at Clinton and 3 of the last 4. And he's going for a 4-peat in the 4-up mules with his team, We Gotta Be Nuts. Not only has he'll lead in his division, but he's the current leader for the Arkansas Chuckwagon Racing Association as the standing president. He's been known to love the sport. He's a great leader, and he has a great ability to create some change. Brad, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
All right. How are y'all?
We're doing
Fantastic.
great.
Doing great, yeah.
We're always learning just a little bit more every time we get on to do one of these. We're learning a little bit more. Episode 5, we're even taking a bigger step, and we're bringing you on cold turkey with some new software, and we hope that it spits out at least some video and audio at the end of this so people can enjoy it. Otherwise, we'll probably be inviting you back again tomorrow or later tonight. So hang in there with us. So talk a little bit about how everything's going in life for you right now when you're not chuckwagon racing or telling people what to do as the president of the association. You know, what's everyday life like for Brad House?
Pretty chaotic. I work all the time, and I do construction. So, man, there's not too many dull moments for me. It's just something going all the time.
Yeah, and I really want to get a little bit more backstory on you as a person. So, as far as chuckwagon racing goes, how did you first learn about the sport and start getting involved?
Me and all my buddies first heard about it in the 90s, and we all started going just because we didn't race at the time. We just thought it was a cool thing to go do. You know, we can go ride horses all over the country and drink beer and chase girls back then.
It's awesome. And talk a little bit about what those early days were like from like a racing standpoint. What were you competing in? What division? And how did that kind of evolve to where you are the buckboard guy now?
Well, when I first really got into serious racing, we raced big horse rubber tire for the first year, just because that's what we had. You know, we picked up a wagon that was, something that somebody had ran that was older, and got it for a pretty decent price. We had horses, or I had horses that would, that would do a little bit of everything, and so that's just where we started at. And I liked it. It was a lot of fun, and it's still a lot of fun. That's a fun division to, it's a good adrenaline rush because you got a small wagon and you got full-grown horses, and man, it's a ride. But not all the races offer that division anymore, and kind of wanted to do something where I could go, to outlaw race, the nationals, or anywhere, and still be able to race. So that's what I kind of got me in the buckboard, and went from there.
It's awesome. Well, I'm going to come back around and talk a little bit more about racing as we get down the line here, but I want to talk a little bit about the association, and I know you were just now kind of more referring to association races and stuff as far as big horse rubber tire, because that's not raced at Clinton,
Right.
And so as far as the association goes, as far as being a member, what does it take to become a member, and what are the current advantages of being a member of the
As long as you're in good standings with the association, it hadn't been a bunch of problems, hadn't been anything like that. Pretty much anybody can get a membership. Membership's like $30. Once you do that, you can go to pretty much all our races and get in for, that price for the weekend instead of whatever the price may be. Plus, you get the annual banquet, usually about the third weekend in January, and that's where we go through and do the general membership. We go over just different things that may have happened through the year, or things that will be voted on, and then later on we'll have a banquet that night. That's when all the awards will be handed out, and usually they'll have a dinner will be catered, and there'll be a dance and all that kind of stuff later on, and everybody kind of let their hair down a little bit.
Yeah, man. This January was my first time going to the association banquet, or the meeting as they call it, and down there in Benton, Arkansas, and
Yes, sir.
and that was a good time. I had a lot of fun. I got to see all those faces that are at all these different races throughout the year, and it is like a relaxation kind of thing. Like, it's not meant to be high strung. Like, nobody's got to race each other that day. It's just
Right.
it's a good time, and it's kind of a fun thing, because it's like the end of the year, but it's also kind of the start of the new year
Right.
for the races, for the association. And so you see everybody renewing memberships or getting signed up for the first time. You're handing out all those awards, and then there's also, in my experience this year, there are decisions to be made where the entire association is there, and they are able to pass new rules and make suggestions, and it's very kind of community driven within the association there. And I'll just ask you, this year, what would you say were some of the key moments in this year's banquet that maybe affected some things for the 2024 association? Where were we sitting on racetracks for the association from back 2023? How did that change this year?
We accepted several new tracks. There was a few that they just wasn't going to be able to be held at that same location anymore, or something. A couple that was like that, and we were really needing to get a few more on the books, and there was a lot of interest, and I'm still getting some interest here and there from different places and different folks, but most of them were for Arkansas, except for Missouri. That was the Baker Spain race, and everything on the new tracks worked out well so far. And I've had pretty good positive feedback on pretty much all of them.
So I have a question about as far as working with track owners. You have 8 different tracks, which you said you like that number. You don't really want more than that right now. You were at 6 last year. This is 8 races across 5 different states, and I'm curious to know, what are some of the challenges that come up when you're trying to work with the logistics of not just going to 5 different states, but what's it like working with all those different track owners, and how does that change from place to place?
It does change a little bit, because everybody is, that's basically their ranch or their home. Most of them are quite welcoming. They're wanting you to be there. And it is challenging at times, just because everybody's got their own little, quirks and things on stuff. But most everybody is pretty good to work with. I've had really good outcome on all that. they're all usually very accommodating. You know, just they kind of fit in the chuckwagon race. They're kind of, you know, they're, once they get to doing it a few years, you know, they're kind of part of the little family of the wagon racing world, you know. And a lot of them will show up to another track, you know, just to see what's going on, what are these guys doing, you know. That's something I want to do, or I don't think I like that, but hey, I really like that idea. That's good. That's something I can try.
Right.
You know, and they just kind of get in the whole little family of it too.
Yeah, and I think it's really neat how the association and all the different tracks find a way to really make every track feel like home, and it just, as the association grows, you can't help but think about what's to come. You know, like you say you're at 8 Chuckwagon races right now, and we know that there are probably other places that have interest. So what is the process of vetting the different tracks, and how do you go about, you know, I mean, is it just something that you have to face as a leadership group, or is it the entire association? What's that process for the association to vet a new track or even the existing tracks to see what's going to happen in 2025?
Well, right now, man, everybody I've talked to is pretty solid on it. In the future, we will get to a point there, if it keeps growing like it is, where we may have to figure out a different route on having a different league, or, you know, there's a couple different ways we've talked about going about it. And I hate to say anything on it right now. I just like to wait and see how it comes out.
Yeah, sure.
Because there are some different ways to handle this. I'd just like to see one on how rapid a growth we have. You know, this could be something that, you know, wagon racing has been going on for many, many years, but it is growing at a pretty good rapid rate right now. So, you know, it depends on if it's something that just kind of, you know, a steady climb, or if it really makes a jump. And
yeah. Well, I understand.
We'll have to sit down and
yeah.
go over a few things in.
Well, I'm with you there, and I feel like the trend is definitely up right now, and I think everybody that you talk to within the Chuckwagon racing community feels that. They feel like there's a bit of a movement happening, and
yes.
And I know you and I have talked about that, but it's just, it seems like in my head you guys have some decisions to make coming up here, because you know, the race attendance is going to get better. You're going to hopefully with the growth of these events and with the popularity of the sport, that you see as many people getting into it, because it seems like the biggest challenge would be having enough competitors at each individual event. You know, what are your thoughts on that, as far as like the growth of the performers and the spectators, like being able to keep up with each other? How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because it is definitely a expensive sport, because one, you've got your livestock, and then you've got your equipment, and then you have to have the vehicles and trailers to haul this stuff up and down the road. And, you know, I'll use me or anybody in a classic or a buckboard. Usually they're having to pull doubles unless they have somebody else that's going the same place with them, because you're having to pull your wagon, you're having to pull, your equipment, and most of that stuff won't fit in a horse trailer. Now, there are times when that some can, but most time you can't pull that off. So yeah, it's expensive to get into. Most of the people that's in the wagon racing world are, they are cowboys, or they are farmers, or they're, ex-rodeo people, that most of the time they already have interest or already in there. But there's a lot of folks that are just, you know, man, they're chomping at the bit to get involved and, you know, to cook or, you know, just be a cheerleader on the sideline. You know, there's a lot of folks that, you know, they find them you know, they're buddies with the team, or they get to meet some of these people and they're, you know, get to be friends with them, and, you know, they come along and they're part of the pit crew sometimes. You know, they're helping you out when, you know, you may have to swap a horse out, or you may have to change from one wagon to another, or, you know, blow a wheel or a tire out. A lot of those folks are there to, you know, they want to be involved. They want to help. They want to, you know, be part of the team.
Right.
Before we move from this subject, David, I'd like to ask a question. So, did you build your own buckboard wagon, or did you purchase it?
When I got into it, I bought a buckboard that the wagon wasn't in the greatest shape, but the wheels were in good shape. And the wagon needed a little bit of work. So I had me and some friends, and they helped me. They helped design it and helped build it.
Wow, that's cool. So if somebody comes and let's just say, you know, they've got experience with horses and things like that, but they've never been in a chuckwagon race and they want to they want to go out and get a wagon, what division do you think is best suited for somebody that's just starting out, that's never driven really a wagon before?
That's a good question.
I would say, if possible, start out with one of the smaller divisions, maybe the 46 mules or 46 ponies. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some of those 46 mules, 46 ponies that can fly. But the wagons they're pulling, or they're the chrome molly, the steel wagons, you know, there's a lot of them around, so those parts are available. And most of those are made the way that most of the tongues and most of the pull pieces and most of the wheels can interchange. So, and it's light. One of those wagons weigh maybe 100 and a quarter, you know. So it's not something that, you know, like a classic that weighs 1,000 pounds, because you really need a setup, or you need a little group of people to help you, you know, get everything going. And they can have smaller stock, so, you know, they can kind of get the feel of it a little bit better. Like I said, not knocking those divisions, because they've got some sure enough runners in there. But that gives you somewhere to start, and you know, you can either stay there and progress, or you can move on up to other divisions. But that'd be a good place to start.
Right. Well, last question here. So let's say that I want to get started and I've got some ponies, and where would you suggest, or is there a place somewhere where you can go out and buy a wagon like that?
Yes, sir. There is a feller named Farrell Fike in Batesville, Arkansas, and he builds race car chassis, and he has built most of them that are like that, using chrome molly tubing and stuff like that. And he's got everything pretty much jig set up, so he can weld them, he can make them, bend them, and he's built a lot of them.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's pretty cool. Well, we need to get that guy on the show one of these days. Talk a little bit about like an inside look on what it's like to build one of these wagons and what it takes, what really the cost gets to looking like on his end. But then, you know, if that's a good business, you know, are you getting a lot of customers? You know, do you need some more? But yeah, I wanted to go back into the racing, which that's a great segue. But I wanted to talk a little bit about buckboard in particular. What is it about that division that really kind of makes it unique and sets itself apart from the other race divisions?
Well, the first thing I'd have to start with probably is being a wooden wheel class. You know, which is a little more nostalgic. You know, usually it in the classics. The classics push real hard, but it's a wooden wheel, you know, event too. Man, there's something different about running the wooden wheels. It's just, you know, it's the clank of the wheel. It's I guess maybe you're setting up a little higher, and you don't have the cushion as a rubber tire is. You know, now we may have spring seats, but still, man, that's you feel it. You know,
It's a rough ride.
yeah, just that's part of it. You know, but man, when you got they got to weigh 500 pounds. You know, no ball bearings. And it's just man, it's a thrill. You know, you get two 52-inch ponies, and when you've got some good stock, man, you can really fly. And I don't know, it's just it's a good harmony when everything is clicking together.
Yeah, and it's from the spectator's perspective, especially for people that don't really understand equine, right? It's like horses versus ponies versus donkeys and mules and all the different kinds of equine livestock. So talk a little bit about the actual speed that you're getting up to and how that compares to the classic, why it's different when you're riding, or how it's different when you're riding versus the classic.
Well, don't get me wrong, the classic's fast, and you're covering a little bit more ground on the classic. You know, you've got a little shorter track with the buckboard, but you know you've got a pony or basically a small horse. You know, which is 52s would be 13 hands. So, you know, you just get to that speed a lot quicker. You know, than you will on a classic. It's a little bit more build up to get there. But when they get there, now don't get me wrong, they're cooking. But it just seems like it's just it's a lot. You get there faster, and it's to me, man, buckboard. You've got a lot of good drivers in there, and you've got a lot of man. You've got a lot of competition.
It seems like the buckboard, it seems like it's very much a class of its own, and it has a, like, just watching it, like, let's say, you know, like, let's use Clinton for example, since that's where we're getting ready to go. When you're sitting on that bluff and you look at those wagons turning the barrel down there, it's like you said, I mean, maybe not shot out of a cannon, but it's getting going real quick.
Right.
And when they turn, I feel like I see, probably on the whole, I feel like I see more buckboards turn over than I do classics, but maybe not. But they're getting whipped around so quick because it is,
You do.
because it's a smaller wagon, and so you just see that glide around the barrel that happens so much quicker at the starting line. And even you know, coming into that first turn, I feel like as a driver, if you're sitting back and to the right of somebody a little bit, you've got to be preparing for that drift that's going to happen for that team in front of you, because they're going to come out a little bit on that curve because the wagon's not quite as heavy, and you even see the classic drift out a bit. So what's that like whenever you're on the track and you're like around the other wagons? How are you compensating for what you know those wagons can move?
Well, when you go into that dip and you're all bunched up there together, you know that curve is coming up. You know what's fixing to happen. And yes, you know, don't get me wrong, everybody wants to hug that barrel as much as you can. But you've got to compensate, and you've got to allow yourself a little bit of room away from that team, because they're going to drift. I mean, you've got a lot of momentum coming there, and you've got a 500-pound wagon with two people in it. So, man, you're gonna slide, and it gets pretty it gets pretty wild there, and you will have a lot of wagons. They'll be rubbing. You'll be hearing the clicking of you know the the wheels, and you'll hear the hubs, and it's a hell of an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, you've got to allow yourself. You've got to, you don't want that wagon to get into your horses, and you don't want, I mean, you're going to some when you're bunched up there, but you try to allow yourself, everybody that's not, as they're staggered there to the outside, you've got to, you've got to allow yourself a little bit of room, and you've got to allow that team on the inside room, because they have nowhere to go.
Right.
Only place they can go is momentum's going to shove you to the outside to a point. It takes a little bit of finesse and a little bit of getting used to, and you've got to watch it, because you don't want to hurt your stock, and you don't want to hurt somebody else's. Plus, man, when you're with some good drivers, that makes a lot of it. That really helps, because you're kind of, man, you're trusting your life just like they are with you. Even if you might not get along, or maybe you're all friends and everything, but you've got to you got to respect everybody there, to keep from getting in a wreck. Because when you go through that dip, or you come around that corner, man, you're bunched up tight, and you've got to be able to drive to know, you can't slam on the brakes. You have nowhere to go. You have to go with the flow and be able to drive and be able to, nobody's going to give their competitor a whole lot of room, but you got to give a little bit of room to keep the flow.
Right. Oh, man.
It's a touchy subject, man. It is.
Yeah, watching it's a thrill, and the more you learn about any division, the more interesting it gets. But let's get into kind of where you're at on the season, on the year, how you're feeling. These last couple events I know that you raced at. I mean, most of the time when we go to these events, we're seeing full house finishing at the top, or right at the top, depending on what's going on. So help me recap just a little bit here what the last couple races were like for you and your team, and how is everybody feeling going into Clinton?
I think we're feeling pretty good. I did have a few hiccups there, just things wasn't really clicking like they should, and sometimes you just gotta go back to the basics and, try to figure out what's going on. But I think we're all right. We'll find out here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I know you kind of mentioned that you had gotten the horses the ponies into the chiropractor, and that you were doing some maintenance things. It seems like that's pretty common at this point in the race season for everybody.
Yeah, that's something that I really didn't realize was going on. I've had to have chiropractor work done before, but this was different than was in the past for me. Some of the regular telltale signs wasn't there. Some of the things that I would used to. So I just went back and did a little groundwork and started doing a few other things and just trying to troubleshoot, what was going on. It's hard to say, because we don't have any races between now and then to see, what's happening. So all I can say is, on that part, we'll find out shortly here in a few weeks what's happening.
Yeah, I guess the benefit to Clinton is at least you get 3 tries at it, assuming you hope that you have good consistent weather all 3 days and that you get 3 good tries. But as we're going back to Clinton, do you feel like you can three-peat? Do you feel like that's where your team is at right now?
Man, I hope that's where I'm at. I'm not exactly sure. I think I can. I think if I'm not, I can still be a contender. I think I've still got a shot at it. Um, it's just hard to say. It's hard to really know unless you've had a race or something like that you can kind of see where you're at. And
Yeah. How much of it boils down to actually just having the fastest team versus having everything kind of going right? Everybody's healthy. You've had a couple good races. What would you rather? Which place would you rather be in? Would you rather be the team that's just you just know you're the fastest, and maybe you haven't had a couple good runs, or would you rather be in a position of like, okay, at least we know we're running really steady. We may not be the fastest team out there, but we know that we're going to have a qualified outrider. We're going to be in the last 2 heats, and our team's fast enough to be in the top 3 or 4.
well, all those are very good situations, and that's hard to say because, man, one um, depends on how. I mean, man, your ponies how they drive makes a lot of difference on your time. Um, you know, um, how good start you have, how everything's running, and if you've got a solid outrider, that that's going to step you up in the game too, because there's going to be some that you know that are solid, man, but you're taking a lot of competitors and a lot of speed, and you're running 4 at a time. I mean, anything can happen. You know, man, somebody might not be able to get on as quick, or they may have equipment failure. You can't never tell. They may be some harness problems, or rains, or when the gun goes off, pony may rear up and get over the tugs, or you know, or get over the tongue. I mean, there's multiple things that could happen there, um, that could affect somebody that's really fast, but you can also get yourself in a bind. Um, you know, there's just so many different variables involved. Um, it's kind of like, man, you've got 3 horses or 3 animals that's depending on the vision, but buckboard, you got, you know, 3 horses. They have to have the same mindset. You got 3 people that's got to have the same mindset. Everything has to be clicking, you know, in a forward smooth motion. And you could be the fastest. You might lose a bedroll. You might lose the box. There's so many things, and you might be the fastest team, but bedroll fell out. I mean, there's so many killers on that. You just try to eliminate the small things and that you can control, and prepare. Do the best you can to prepare for it.
Yeah, you just see how things are standing when you roll through that finish line. You never know. But so getting into the competition a little bit, what would you say for those that are listening? What are the top 3 to 5 teams, if you want to go that far? What are the top maybe 3 or 4 teams that you are looking at as maybe your closest competitors this year? And how does that affect the way that you approach a race, knowing who's quick out there? How does that give you an advantage or change your mindset going into Clinton?
Man, the last 2 or 3 heats is always, they are always competitors. They are always serious, and they're always, really pushing the bar and trying. And man, you can get teams out of those, maybe the second to last, third to last heats that man, if they get a really good run, they can step out there and, win it. But no, any of those in the last couple, especially the last heat, I mean, you've got all those guys that have pretty much won national championships, or if they haven't, they're so close you can't even breathe, and they'll be there. They're good drivers, and they're bringing their A game. They're coming to win, and there's only going to be one winner, and they're trying. So you've got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, and when you look at the competition, and so like taking like a team that I always see kind of that's in there, that I feel like over the years I've seen kind of right there racing close with you guys. A lot of the years would be Bad Company. I see Cameron and Mike Johnson there. I see those guys always racing you tough and stuff. So knowing that this year Cameron hasn't made as many races prior to going down to Clinton, gosh, maybe only a couple. How do you speak to, like, as those guys are competition, serious competition, do you feel like a team like that didn't get to race as much this year, how do you feel like they're feeling going into Clinton versus these teams that have been able to get out and make a lot of races and really get their animals where they want them to be? How does that affect you as a team at Clinton?
It does kind of give you a little bit of an advantage when you've been able to make some of these other races, because you can see where you're at. You can see, what I probably need to work on a little bit, or hey, I'm running pretty strong right now. Just keep on where I'm at. It does give you a little bit of advantage, but Cameron, man, he's a seasoned racer. He's been racing for a long time. He knows the sport. He knows, he's going to be competitive. If he didn't make a race all year, he's still going to be competitive because he knows what to take to do it. He knows what's involved, and he's a good driver, aggressive driver.
Mm-hmm.
Any of them guys in the last heat, Brent Henderson, he's won it a couple times. Tater Wilbanks, them guys, they are, man, that's a tough heat. They're tough competition, and they're trying to win. They're as serious as they can be.
Yeah, we saw Brent Henderson with Bar H Ranch and Rodeo. They've won it a couple of times over there at Clinton. We saw him call out Full Throttle Loca at the last race at Camden, and that was the last stop for all those teams going towards Clinton. And I was able to interview Brent following that race, and I kind of asked him how he felt about it, and he said, I got some things to work on still. So he's one of those guys that probably needs to get a couple more weeks of training to kind of get where he wants to be. But on the flip side, from those teams that have maybe haven't been able to get out and like really sharpen the knives yet this year, you've got a team that's been at every race she can get to, which is Janet Priscilla with Full Throttle Loca, Cook, Cindy Wheeler. What can you say about a team like that has really put in the work this year and has come on strong, taking the last couple buckles at the last couple races this year?
They have really ran strong. They've ran really well this year, and they've ran well in the last few years. But they've really ran strong. They'll be some competitors. They'll be tough competition.
Man, well, we're excited to see it, and we've been watching you guys this year. It's been fun to see you guys just duke it out there in the buckboard. Well, Brad, we're excited to see you over there at Clinton. We really appreciate you taking the time to get on here to talk about not only how your race team's doing and where your head's at coming back to try to three-peat the buckboard, which we know you're as close as anybody on the 4-Up Mules, and I wish we had more time to talk about that today, but we're going to really be focusing, at least from what we're shooting this year, we do have a big heavy emphasis on trying to capture the buckboard and tell that story to help people that maybe aren't as familiar with Chuckwagon racing to understand another division with season 2 of the Great Wagon Race. And so we're excited to see what you're going to do. We're excited to see you just out there competing and doing what you do. And if there's anything else that you would want to say, right now is the time to say it before we go to Clinton.
Well, unfortunately, I won't be running 4-up mules this year. That I hate that I'm not, but the team's in different hands, and they're going through a little different route, and not everybody could agree on some things. So, bad as I hate to say it, I'm not going to be running the 4-up.
Well, we're sorry to hear that. We know that you've been kicking some butt in that particular division, so I hope things unfold a little bit better there for you guys in the future. And we can only think that means you're going to be all the more focused on the buckboard. So that's just fine too. So again, we appreciate you being on the show, and we appreciate you taking so much time to talk to us. It's cool to hear about everything that's going on with the association. And for those of you out there that are listening to this and you're not a part of the association, you heard it here. It doesn't take that much to be a part. You just need to be in good standing, and that just means be a good person, right? Show up and become a part of it. We want you to become a part of the association. It gives you a lot of benefits going to the other races. It's got some perks and stuff, and who knows, maybe at some point you'll even talk to somebody at one of these events and think you might want to get into a wagon too. So, Brad, we appreciate you being on. You can just hang up on us anytime, and we're excited to see you there at Clinton.
All right, man. Hopefully I can pull off another one.
We're rooting for you, man. You take care, all right?
All right. Appreciate it.
All right, see you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Man, good interview. Brad, always a pleasure to talk to that guy. How'd you guys feel about that?
I think it went well. I think he spoke well to a lot of the questions that you had to ask him. I think he articulated it pretty well, and had some things to say that maybe not all of us would think about sitting on the sidelines looking in. Interesting.
I think it went well too. I mean, you're talking about a person that's been a part of this for quite some time now. Maybe not as long as some people at Clinton, but you're talking about, like he said, he started in the 90s. He has he has a lot of experience in wagon racing, and so he brought a lot of insight that again, people wouldn't think of. Like Andy said, he brings things that other people may not see, spectators may not see. So it was a good interview. What did you think, David?
Oh man, it's always good to talk to Brad, and it's cool to get the chance to kind of just pick his brain a little bit on some of that stuff. You think the association growing like it is, you really want to you want to feel confident that it's going to grow healthily, and that there's that people are thinking of the future. And you can tell Brad is, like he said, he's like, there's going to be some things coming up that we're going to have to address, and there's a couple of different ways we can do it, and he doesn't want to speak on it now, but right. They are facing you don't really think of growth as like a crisis or as like a major issue, but there are pains that come with growing, and the association is growing rapidly, and so as the sport grows, they have to decide, they have to make unselfish decisions for the sport. And that might mean that you have to start another league, like he said. You may have to start another association, and it's like, okay, well, do you try to keep some control there so that it doesn't spiral if you put somebody else in charge of something, or do you try to split up what you have? How do you go about it? And like I was saying, with the 5 states of races right now, I know that you could probably come up with 8 races in Arkansas if you really wanted to. And when you look at the Alabama and the Kentucky and the Tennessee races, you start drawing some lines, and you're like, well, if there was another league, does it push over there onto the if it's east of does it have to be east of the Mississippi? Does it have to be east of the Arkansas state line? What does it have to be for it to make sense to to kind of push those boundaries, and how do you do that in a healthy way that you don't choke out some of these events if you add more races because you have another, you have another league or another association. It's crazy. And then to top it all off, these aren't like NBA games where you get, dozens and dozens and dozens of games, or there's all these opportunities. You have a kind of a season for this stuff, and you eat a whole weekend at each one of them.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many variables there that you have to consider to make healthy change when you grow.
Yeah. And I feel like you'd have to develop each one of those states a little bit more. If you were doing it on a state by state basis, I feel like that you would have to get a lot more interest from racers in those states, because right now I don't see that at this point. I mean, I see the same names going everywhere. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think that when you come to look at maybe different leagues and things like that, it kind of needs to be on the same kind of level that you think of. You've got your college and your NFL, right? So you're going to have those amateur athletes that are going to be a higher content level. You know what I mean? They're going to bring the show more than, say, somebody that's not winning all the time. But at the same time, you're helping those people that don't always win, because now they're getting their chance to win by having those lower level tier leagues. You know what I mean?
I see what you mean.
So I think that would be the best route, probably, if they were going to look at that kind of, structure.
Yeah, and I think my hot take on it kind of goes in line with what happened this last year. You saw Baker Spain, which was an established outlaw race that got brought in. It wasn't just like, hey, we added a track. It was, hey, we added an event that's established, and there's still a couple of outlaw races out there. I actually that have actually, I mean, Neches, Texas, the 1836 over there. That's an event that had been a foot in the water with the association there for a couple of years, and then circumstances happen and things didn't work out. There's a falling out, let's say, and then there's always two sides to every story, and you want to see people kind of keeping good relationships and stuff. But I think that's part of Brad being here and the position he's in, is you hope, but he continues to do what he's been doing, which is to bridge the gap between maybe some of the old, I guess, let bygones be bygones, and let's look forward to building the sport again, because there's been so much newness throughout the 40 years of the history of the sport that there's growing pains. There's, hey, I want to do this in this new area because I want to grow the sport, and that doesn't agree with what other people want to do. There's been a lot of that stuff over the years, and as we kind of come to this point that the sport's growing to where we have to see some overlap, we have to see some unity, we have to see some people ally again, if you will. My hot take is that you're going to have to see some tough conversations and some compromise happen between these other races that are established to get them involved. Because I think if you add, let's say you add 2 more outlaw races, and then you start thinking, okay, maybe we cut it down the middle. Maybe we cut it down to where we have a 6 event deal. We're going to add Chase Outlaws event in there, and then we got 4 of these over here. And I mean, anything can happen. And then you also have to look at bringing in, what's your leadership look like? So there's a lot of hot takes that could be made there, but I think that it's going to be, there will be discomfort. That's going to come, and that's part of growth. And the cool thing is, Brad's not a stranger to some discomfort. Like he's been through this stuff for a long time, and so you want to have somebody with that, that war experience, that knows how to kind of work with people and has seen some seasons come and go.
Right.
And he has the experience to say, hey, I've seen things not work out, and that's okay. I've seen people not work out and get better again, and that's good. That's what can happen. So let's take some risk now, knowing that next year might be different. I think he's the kind of guy that will do that. So moving out of that, you guys have any last thoughts on Brad House and the Buckboard before we start? Okay, moving on. So next episode, right now we don't have a special guest lined up, but that episode's going to be our last one before we go to the National Championships the week before, actually. And the exciting thing about that episode is at that point we're going to have enough input from the oafs that we should have a good idea of the teams that are going to be racing in the different heats. So we'll be able to start really talking the sports side of this and do our projections on who we think is going to be taking home the crown in these different divisions. So that will be our focus on the next episode, right before we go down to Clinton, and we do a couple of our own podcasts there at Clinton, which we're excited to have a different backdrop for the show and take you all on that ride with us as we go to the Bar OF. And I think those are going to be some of our coolest episodes yet.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, again, if you like what you're getting out of this podcast, please hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube, or if you're seeing this for the first time and you haven't become a subscriber of the Chuckwagon channel, go to chuckwagonchannel.com, get subscribed. We drop a new episode every Thursday with the public release on Friday on YouTube, and we would just love to have you be a part of our community. So also go over to Facebook and like the CWC podcast and become a fan and a follower there. And thank you so much for being a listener, and we'll see you out on the track.
Thanks for listening to the CWC podcast.